Ask 100 people which Final Fantasy game is their favourite, and you'll get a nice spread of answers. A lot of 6 through 10 admittedly, but every entry has its fans, ardent defenders and zealots. And they all love them for different reasons. A character that stuck with them, a story that resonated on a level they didn't expect, gameplay, the battle system, the environment, setting, even the fashion. But not every entry in the franchise is as well remembered or as widely beloved. It would be fair to call it a series comprised almost entirely of the black sheep. Well, Final Fantasy II might be the biggest black sheep of them all. It makes the bold move of setting aside almost every design decision that made Final Fantasy I such a success, in favour of an all-new leveling system, a dark narrative about life under a violent empire, and resistance against it. And honestly, I respect it a lot. Our bright and sunshiny story begins with the Palamecian Empire, led by overall good dude Emperor Matthias invading the kingdom of Fynn, putting civilians to the sword and whole villages to the torch. 4 youths, Firion, Maria, Guy, and Leon try to flee the onslaught before getting cornered by Imperial soldiers. It's far from a fair fight, and the party is defeated easily. Fortunately, they're saved by the rebel forces led by Princess Hilda. Gone is the idea that the world's heroes are chosen by fate or the crystal or whatever. These are heroes of circumstance. Nothing is given, and everything is earned. And this is where the game introduces a new system. Keywords. Some characters will say certain keywords that appear in red, and then you can go through the menu and ask them more about it. Learn the keyword and say it to someone else to get additional information, etc. It's an interesting idea, but it's just a little tedious in reality. If they had fun little interactions where you could ask people keywords that weren't there to further the story, it could have been more enjoyable, but those are very few and far between. It didn't really need to be there, and you won't hear me talk about it much moving forward. Thanks to this weird wizard tutorial room, we learn about the more significant departure from the last game. This game is jobless. There are no classes. Instead, you level singular spells or your proficiency with a specific weapon archetype. In order to make the most of the system, it's a good idea to have a general plan of who you want to do what. It would be a huge setback for you to decide 15 hours in that you would rather Guy be the tank and not Firion, who has 15 hours worth of shield skill. The same goes for spells. Initially, I intended Maria to focus heavily on magic, but loading one character with all of the spells becomes a hindrance because you can only level one at a time. It's best to spread them out so everybody has a little bit of everything. While grinding for some starter cash in the overworld, I get poisoned, and interestingly enough, it's automatically cured when you finish the encounter. The game splits status effects into 2 categories, those that persist post-combat and those that are cured at the end of combat. It's cool, the issue is there's a cure spell for both of these categories, and one does not work on the other, so you need to keep track of which status ailments are which. Does blind get cured at the end of combat? Does paralysis or petrification? Figure it out, scrub. Despite being so early in the game, a decent portion of the map is open to you, but if you stray from the path, expect to get smacked down by something you simply cannot beat, so I hope you saved recently. After Hilda refuses to let you join the Wild Rose Rebellion, saying that you're too green around the gills, the party heads back to Fynn. There you find the prince dying in his bed. He tells you that Count Borgen betrayed everyone, and to convince Gordon, his brother, to join the rebellion's efforts. He confesses his feelings for Hilda in confidence before taking his secret to the grave. You take his ring back to Hilda, and she realizes that yes, indeed, you are fit to join the rebellion. She directs us to Salamand to find Mithril, saying that it's necessary in order to defeat the Empire. A man named Joseph was sent to retrieve some, but nobody has heard back from him since. Hilda asks Minwu to join us, a white mage who seems to know every spell in the book, very useful ally to have. But more importantly, he also brings with him his canoe, allowing us to traverse the lakes and the rivers. The last piece of advice that Hilda leaves us with is that the Empire is building a dreadnought in the town of Bafsk, a mighty airship to use in their conquest. Sounds like something we should stop. Heading out of town and north across a lake to a place called Paloom, where we could charter a ferry across to another town called Poft. But I'd rather save the money and get the XP, so we'll just walk. Both Paloom and Poft are as of yet untouched by the Empire, fortunate for them. In Poft we find an oh so familiar airship owning man, Sid, in his first in-person appearance in the franchise. You can take his airship to get you straight to Salamand, but the price is a little steep, so again, we'll walk and get some levels. Along the way, I decide to right my previous wrongs and make Guy my unarmed, monkish fighter. It's also nice not needing to buy any weapons. My current idea is for Firion to be the tank, Maria to be a bow / black magic user, and Guy as a monk / white mage. Minwoo is just kinda here for the time being. I assume he's going to leave after the job's done. In Salamand we find Joseph, but he's being a little coy with the information about the Mithril. But if we save some enslaved citizens at Semet Falls, he'll tell us. The magic shop in Salamand makes one of my wishes come true. Finally, there's a spell called Teleport that teleports you right out of the dungeon, no matter how many floors. Funnily enough, it actually has less of a place in this game than the previous. Why? Well, the issue with the warp spell was that it only took you to the previous floor, and using it would expend a very valuable spell slot. Final Fantasy II, however, has moved away from spell slots in favour of mana, so now the spell would be much easier and cheaper on resources to use. I head out and found the 1k gil needed to buy it over the course of the next 10 minutes or so. And I accidentally buy the completely wrong spell. I bought Warp, not Teleport. I just accept it for now. Semet Falls is very short, but while in there I noticed that random encounters are much more frequent in this game, and therefore more annoying. We save the citizens. Among them is a guy called Paul, who handles the Mithril, and Nellie, Joseph's daughter. No wonder he was so extra keen on saving them. The dungeon continues a little deeper. Down there we find a chest containing the teleport spell. How kind of the game to consider my fuck up and correct it for me. We also find the sergeant who boasts about his incredible Mithril sword, and still promptly gets owned. Knitting does a Mithril axe. The guy had a sword, but he dropped an axe. And some raw Mithril. While equipping the axe, I realised that in this game you can dual wield, so the plan to make Firion a tank is out of the window. Why take less damage when you can simply do more? Back in Altair, the blacksmith Tobble takes the Mithril off our hands and stocks his shop with some new shiny Mithril weapons. And Hilda lets us know that our theft of the Mithril will slow the Empire's momentum. Now we're to journey to Bafsk to stop the dreadnought before it's completed. Cleverly, they've planted a man on the inside who can get us access. We meet the spy by the entrance who lets us know to head through the sewers. Just as we reach the dreadnought, a cutscene triggers, where a Dark Knight stops us in our tracks and the airship is completed. The Empire wastes no time in flaunting their new power. By bombing Poft, and Paloom. This game is going to be much heavier than the last. Sid lets us know that the sunfire that powers the dreadnought could also be used to destroy it. At least we have a loose plan. Back in Altair, asking Hilda and the ailing king about the Sunfire, they tell us that it can be obtained at Kashan Keep. But to break the seal to access it, you need the Goddess Bell, which can be found somewhere in the snowy plains. Joseph knows the specifics. Minwoo decides to stay behind and do what he can for the king's worsening condition. Joseph joins us and says that his snowcraft is hidden away in Semet Falls. Retrieving it from behind a hidden wall gets us access to the snow plains up north. And this is where I come to the realization that having most status effects auto-heal at the end of a fight both makes the game less tedious, and from a balance standpoint, lets enemies use status effects more often, which helps to make every individual random encounter feel a little more impactful. If they were this frequent and persistent, the game would just turn into a menu simulator. At the end of the dungeon, in the snowy plains, we find a room full of beavers. And even more surprising is that Guy can speak to them. I don't really know what Guy is, but the translated beaver tells us that there's a secret room to the right, but there's a fierce monster in there. It's an Adamantoise, series staple, smoked him in one turn, he didn't even know what hit him. Taking the bell from the recess in the wall and heading out, waiting for us by the entrance, is Bargain. His failure in dealing with us will get him executed by the Emperor, so he's decided to take us head on. And he died in 2 hits. In his death throes, he lets slip that he's trapped the cave and looses a boulder on us, Indiana Jones style. Joseph gives it his all and tanks it, while we run to safety. At the cost of his own life. Once again, back to Sid, this time to charter an airship to Kashan. Is it Kashan or Kashuan? I don't know. I'll probably flip-flop between them. Upon landing, I see there's a glowing clearing in the woods to the south. Have to check that out. It's Chocobos. To think that this is the game that they came from, with the same music and everything. Anyway, we use the bell to open the door to the keep. Inside we find Gordon. Don't know how he got in there. He says he's here to find Igil's torch, the vessel that you use to carry the Sunfire. He's failed to get any further in thanks to the monsters, but together we can make it through. And so we claim both the torch and the Sunfire with no issue. While leaving the keep, we get a small cutscene where the dreadnought zips by and snatches Sid's airship right out of the sky and heads to the south. An insane feat of engineering, to be honest. Getting back to Altair, Minwoo tells us that Hilda left to meet us at the keep on Sid's airship. So in one move, the Empire has captured the only other airship, Sid and Hilda. And he lets us know that it's headed to the south to refuel. One genuinely amazing thing about this game is how much more interesting and well told the story is. So much is going on, the state of the world is changing, the people are coming and going with their own missions that sometimes intersect with our own. It holds up shockingly well. In the southeast of the map we find Sid and Hilda in a prison, and once freed they fled to safety. Now this dungeon is a significant step up in both difficulty and length. Balance wise I would have preferred one and then the other, but we're getting both at the same time. A large part of its difficulty is thanks to these little rat guys, stunners they're called, and as the name might suggest, they inflict paralysis with their standard attack. So stumbling into a large group of them will make what's normally a very short fight into a very long and drawn out affair, where you're just skipping turns waiting for one of your 4 party members to be cured. They're not dangerous, they're just arduous. When we reach the end, we use the Sunfire to destroy the Dreadnought's engine, and the Dark Knight appears before us once more. Maria thinks she recognises his voice, but now's not the time to figure it out. We need to escape. Sid's airship takes us back to Altair. This is where the king appoints Gordon as the leader of the army and says that the seal on the ultimate spell, in quotes, should have been broken. As the prophecy states, the seal will be broken when the world is on the brink of destruction. Our next task is to head to Deist, or Deist, I'm not really sure, the home of the Dragoons. Supposedly, the Empire wiped all of them out, but if there are any left, we will need them and their wyverns to help. And upon issuing that final order, the king dies. We head to the mostly destroyed Paloom to board a ship to Deist. A sailor there tells us that they have a ship that's about to leave. How unsuspiciously convenient. Almost as soon as we step on board, Layla the sailor reveals all of this to be a ruse. They're pirates, and they intend on taking us for all we're worth. But when your sprites are this funny looking, there's no way you can put up a fight. They lose, in one turn. They admit defeat, but we manage to bring them all into the fold. Their hatred of the Empire is just as strong as ours. An enemy of my enemy, and all that. Layla joins the party. Deist is a castle on a tiny island to the far east reaches of the map. In there, we find a mother and a son, the family of a dragoon. She lets us know that the last remaining wyvern is in the room next to her. However, it needs a particular pendant to open, and that can be found in a cave to the north. So a quick trip in and out, and we're back with the pendant. The wyvern inside tells us that the poison that claimed his kin will claim him too. The last of the dragoons, Rickard, left to seize the ultimate spell, and with the last of his energy, hands us the last remaining egg of his kind, and tells us that it must be placed in the life spring as soon as possible. And we do exactly that. After fighting through a dreadful cave that's a pain in the ass to navigate, we place the egg into the spring and it sinks into its depths. Back to Altair. But along the way, I decide it's probably a good time to grind some spells, mainly Esuna and Basuna, the status healing spells, seeing as they only heal certain ailments after hitting certain levels. For example, petrification can only be cured with a level 5 plus Esuna. Anything below that will result in a wasted turn and wasted mana. On arrival in Altair, we meet again with Hilda, but at some point along the journey home, maybe even before we rescued her, the real Hilda was replaced by the Lamia Queen, who attempts to seduce Firion to ambush him. She charmed Guy on turn 1, Esuna didn't work on him, guess I should have used Basuna, who could have known. From that point on, I decided to just auto-attack, wipe, and try again fresh. During which, Guy punches himself to death, but we win anyway. I suppose she didn't have very much max HP. The real Princess Hilda is being lauded as the grand prize at a tournament being held in the Palamecia Colosseum. We brazenly storm straight in and get locked in a room. The The Emperor himself makes an appearance, but is just out of reach. I guess we're gonna have to take part in the fights. First up is a behemoth. We cast Blind and Berserk and nuke him from orbit. And with that victory comes the chance to end the Emperor right here, right now. Except he knows exactly who we are, so I don't think we'll get the opportunity. He takes his leave and his Dark Knight shows up and imprisons us. Paul, who we saved earlier in the mines, takes out a guard covering our cells and lets us out. While searching the place for Hilda, I had a surprising encounter. 4 entire fully grown adult Chimera. This was a boss fight like an hour or so ago, and now it's just a random encounter we might happen upon at any time. The game is really starting to ramp up the difficulty. I also give Gordon a fire spell so that he can help with these flower enemies who charm with their standard attack, but he leaves with Hilda the moment we free her. Very poor investment on my part. I wipe to those exact same enemies right after and have to reload to before I gave Gordon the tome. He ain't getting it back. While on the journey back to Altair, we find that the rebels have set up a camp near Finn Castle to get ready for their assault. Gordon tells us our role in this is to use the chaos to our advantage and kill the Castellan. Layla rejoins as we enter. She can take the fire tome instead of Gordon. Engaging with the Castellan at the top, of course, results in a fight, and he kind of looks like a mix between Ganon and Zod from Berserk, but he puts up a fraction of the fight of either of those guys. And it becomes apparent to me that boss fights in this game are much easier. The bulk of the difficulty comes from what you face on the way to them. The castle is reclaimed, Hilda and Gordon sit atop the thrones, and Hilda states that she's glad to be back, but there's no time to rest. Minwu has left for Mysidia, and there has been no word from him since. We need to find him. Mysidia is a land of mages, we'll be needing their help against the Emperor of course. The ultimate magic everyone's been talking about is held within their tower. Opening the tower is a bit of an issue. It requires 2 masks, 1 black, 1 white. The white can be found within the bells of Finn Castle, just waiting to be picked up. As long as you have the password. And thanks to Hilda, we do. And it's during this Finn Castle section where I realise what the main problem is with random encounters. It's not wrong, but a little inaccurate to say the issue is their frequency. The more accurate way to say it would be to say it's an issue with their variance. There's very little variance in how far you can walk before triggering a random encounter. Generally, it's within 1 to 1.5 screens worth of movement, and it feels like clockwork, and because of that it becomes highly monotonous. 6 floors deep into the castle's underbelly, we find the white mask, and we get out as soon as we can. Here I did a little more spell farming, and the setup for it is a little bit silly. I auto-cast offensive AoE spells on myself, and cast AoE healing spells on myself. This way I get to AFK for longer, and level my HP while taking some hits. It's very dumb, but it works like a charm. We make it to Mysidia in the southwest. It's a little town bordered on one side by mountains and on the other by a forest. In the town there's a lake, at the centre of which some stairs leading to a statue that we placed the white mask on. A villager tells us that the black mask can be found on a tropical island in the middle of the sea. There we find a small area where some people live. I assume they're native to the island. They let us know that the black mask is highly important to them. I hope that we can convince them to let us have it instead of just stealing it from them. We steal it, and from there we head to the cave of Mysidia, just beyond the mountain range that borders Mysidia. Within this cave, we find a man who looks exactly like Firion, and we place the black mask on him, and he vanishes alongside it. In there we also encounter a Marlboro, the first of the franchise, I believe. I don't think there was one in Final Fantasy 1, but it was months ago now when I played it. At the end of this cave we claim for ourselves the Crystal Rod. With this, the tower should open up, and that can be found on an atoll to the west of the map. But upon approach, the sea opens up into a colossal whirlpool and swallows the ship. The group wakes up in some sort of fleshy cave, and Layla is missing. Now at this point I opened up the map to pause the game while I could write some notes, and the map spoils that we are actually inside Leviathan. Oops. Much like the volcano in Final Fantasy 1, the floor here does consistent damage as you walk over it. It only seems to do a single point of damage per tick, so feel free to wade through the stomach acid all you like. Through a weird, disgusting sphincter door, we find there's a whole damn village down here. People, beds, bookshelves, tables and chairs, all of which were at some point swallowed by Leviathan. And it seems like some of these people have been here for a long time, which begs the question, what the hell do they eat? But stood in one of the corridors blocking the way forward is Rickard, the Dragoon mentioned earlier. We show him the Crystal Rod, and he says that he too was after the Ultimatome before getting munched. He tags along with us and lets us know that further in the bowels of the beast is a boat that's guarded by a powerful monster. Now here is a fairly major issue with this game, and a couple games after it. I've played ahead, I take a long time to write and record all of these. New party members often don't match the level of the content that you're doing when you get them. What do I mean? Well, we just met Rickard, a legendary member of the Dragoons, perhaps the only surviving Dragoon in the world. He's a strong and capable fighter who's made it this far on his own. So why is he underleveled to the point that he gets one shot by the first important encounter we meet? The narrative we're told about him and the gameplay we get to experience with him are not in sync. In fact, they're polar opposites. And unfortunately, during this fight, it's more efficient just to leave him dead. Because if you res him and heal him, that's 2 turns used, and he will just be one shot again. We squish the worm and recover the ship, which helps us escape the Leviathan. Maybe through the back end? I don't know. But where the hell is Layla? But where the hell is Leela? What have I been calling her so far? Layla or Leela? Lila? I've been saying it without a second thought, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure how I've said it this whole time. Anyway, she doesn't seem to be among the eaten, so just where did she end up? So now we have access to the Magician's Tower, and I kind of wish we didn't, because it is a hell of a slog. It's 10 floors, with mini-bosses at the milestone floors. It's long, and it's rough. And Rickard is still getting demolished at an alarming rate. But finally, making it to the top, we find Minwu. The dude managed to get here without running into the Leviathan, even though it swallows everyone who's carrying a crystal rod. And he managed to climb to the top of the tower. He's just built different, I guess. He tells us he's been waiting for our arrival because the seal on the door just up ahead is so strong it will take everything he's got to break it. And it really does. The exertion of it kills him. And with his dying words, he tells us to claim Ultimatome and not to grieve, for this was his destiny. The now unsealed room houses 4 crystals, each giving a permanent buff to strength, agility, intellect and spirit. And in the middle is where the Ultimatome can be found. I was expecting this to be a key item that gets used within the story later on, but it's actually just like any other spell tome. I can teach it to someone. So of course, I give it to our resident mage, Mariah. Our triumphant return to Fynn is ruined because now there's an enormous cyclone closing in on the town. The problems never stop coming to find us. Hilda believes, or knows, that the approaching cyclone is controlled by the Emperor's magic, and while we've been gone, it's already destroyed a number of towns on its way here. But for us, it's time to use the pendant we picked up earlier. We use it on a weird looking mirror in the west wing of the castle, and the mirror shows us a vision of the now hatched young wyvern we placed in the life spring earlier, and he's on his way to Finn. Wyvern and Dragoon together again, as it should be. We head into Paul's house, and he tells us we're insane for thinking about going into the cyclone. I mean, he's not wrong. But he also says to take the resources he's been squirreling away if we need them. We'll take the lot. The wyvern grabs us and takes us into the cyclone, which starts to expand to absolute gargantuan degrees. This thing is a serious calamity. As far as dungeons go in this game, this one's actually pretty short and sweet. In my notes I wrote about how I was guessing that it was easy because the boss at the end will be brutal. Let's see how that plays out, because here's the Emperor himself. And there he goes. No second phase where he reveals himself to be a god or an otherworldly being. He just declares that he won't die, dies, and vanishes in the exact same fashion as every other important character who's died so far. So we know it's for real. We get ejected back to Finn, where Hilda of course thanks us for our efforts and says our story will be told for future generations. Our legacy will live on long beyond us. And a gala is thrown in our honour. Layla is there too. Where did she come from? Who knows? A soldier bursts in and interrupts the celebrations to inform everyone that the Dark Knight has now declared himself the Emperor. No surprise, seeing as we never really dealt with him. They say he's reorganized the Palamecian Empire and that danger is on its way. The soldier dies on the spot. Gordon confirms our suspicions and lets us know that the Dark Knight is indeed Leon, the party member that we lost at the very start of the game, Maria's brother. Of course she believes that he can be saved, but this man not only aided the evil empire, but once it lost its head, and should have collapsed, took its reins in his own hands, and seems to be continuing down the exact same path. Palamecia Fortress is up in the mountains, said to be impregnable, but Paul's bragging about having broken in the past, and Sid's there with him, and with his final breath he bequeaths us his airship. Nobody is spared the axe in this game. People are dying left and right, and it really makes the situation feel dire and near hopeless. But before the weight of the situation can crush us, it's dungeon time. And it's fairly standard, that is until you find a monster-filled chest filled with 5 fucking curls. The problem is, these guys can one-shot even if they hit a 0, which is really nice to deal with. Whatever the odds are on the one-shot, they're high. It happens far more often than not. Single dumbest fight I've seen so far. Even if I had the capability of one-shotting them, there would be one left at the end of the turn. They would kill a party member regardless. But one-tapping them is a pipe dream. I just can't pump out numbers like that. They take 2 to 3 attacks to kill, so I can only reliably kill 1 per turn, leaving 4 kills, each to one-shot one of the party members, leading to a wipe. Even if one of them fails and I'm left with 1 party member alive, with the opportunity to drop a Phoenix down on another, I'll be so far behind the curve that there's just no coming back. I just left the chest. I'm not completing that. Another semi-annoying enemy in here are the generals, but not for any bullshit reasons like the curls or the Lamia Queen, but just because they can hit over 1,000 and drain my already waning resources. We find the Dark Knight Leon at the top, and Maria is trying to stop any conflict from happening. Leon has no desire to oblige, saying nothing but raw power rules the world. The weak do not survive without the protection of the strong. But while he's spouting his nonsense, a hellish portal opens and from it emerges the Emperor, looking a little bit different. He states that the power he gained from hell makes an empire a trifling matter, and now he can rule the world on his own. Rickard reveals his name to be Rickard Highwind, presumably a relative of Sid. He makes his final stand as a proud dragoon while the Wyvern swoops in and saves the rest of us, and Leon. Castle Palamecia collapses and a new castle rises in its place. Leon seems to realise his position and decides it's in all of our best interest to team up against the risen again Emperor. Hilda lets us know that beasts from hell have invaded and they're currently in a place known as the Jade Passage somewhere in Mysidia. And now that Leon's here, I'm pretty confident he'll be here for the remainder of the game, so I'm going to give him a couple of supporting spells so he can start leveling them ASAP. Although interestingly enough, I feel like I'm currently strong enough to go through the rest of the game without much grinding. But there's just something in me that this time around wants to grind a little. Returning to Diced Castle to inform the woman and the child there of Rickard's passing, she gives us the castle's most treasured item, Excalibur. Why the most treasured weapon of the Dragoons isn't a spear, I don't really know, but at least it's high up on the mythological sword hierarchy. The Jade Passage itself is a large hole and somewhat of a portal that takes you deep, deep down to the bottom of the pit. The only important encounter I had while cleaning this place was a chimera that killed my whole party in one move by landing stone on all of them at once. Before the era of being able to quick save from a menu whenever you like, stuff like this would cause me to abandon the franchise. But what gamers expected of a game was a little bit different back then. Reaching the end of the place, there's another portal pad that looks much like the one that brought us here. This one, however, takes us to Castle Pandemonium, the structure that took the place of Castle Palamecia. From one dungeon right into another. If I run out of restoratives or need to grind, I'm going to be in a very sticky position. So let's hope I was right in thinking that I was strong enough to clear the game. Well, I got ambushed by two curls as soon as I entered the second floor. Hate seeing those things. They chew through so many of your Phoenix downs and it all just kind of feels cheap, like artificial difficulty. But again, if I run out of Phoenix downs, I have to teleport out of this place and do the entire double dungeon again. So I am now just fleeing from these encounters. And thanks to some strategic fleeing, we make it to the end without major issue, and it's Emperor time. Guy is on full-time heal duty, Firion is the main source of damage, Mariah is swapping from Esuna to fire depending, and Leon is just kinda dead weight, I won't lie. So he can hit 3.3k with an auto attack, and that also heals him for 2.5k per time. It's not looking good for us, I'll be honest. I tried a couple of times, but the fact that I can only do like 1 to 1.5k damage per turn and he heals so much makes it feel impossible, at least as we are currently. So I did some googling just to make sure I wasn't missing something glaringly obvious. I wasn't, but I did find a strat that was so silly I had to try. And that is maximising everybody's evasion by unequipping all of their armour. Give Firion the Blood Sword, which performs amazingly here, while everyone else is dual wielding shields to maximise their chances at tanking in the event that they fail to dodge. Going into the fight, I use a couple of Sage items to max out Mariah's Spirit and Intelligence, and use Berserk on Firion, Haste and Blink on everyone. And Firion killed him in 2 turns, hitting 7k plus. Ripping piss, Emperor. Back in Finn Castle, Hilda thanks us for our efforts and Gordon says his cowardly days are behind him, thanks to us. And it's time to build a better and fairer kingdom. Well, Paul and Layla give their thanks with one last snarky comment. Nellie, Joseph's kid, approaches us and gives us her thanks as well. Briefly, the visage of Joseph appears behind her. Leon takes his leave from the group, and likely the kingdom as a whole. Briefly, the ghosts of everyone we've lost during our way appear. One final recognition of what's been sacrificed along this bloody journey. And that brings Final Fantasy II to a close. A bold game that I just can't help but respect for the swings that it took. Even if some of them missed. Even if most of them missed. It's ballsy, I like it. I still think about it even though I recorded all of this months ago. It earned a very comfortable C rank. Peace.
Hey, check it out, I learned the bassline from Final Fantasy II.
Scott, you are the salt of the earth.
Oh, thanks.
I meant scum of the earth.
Thanks.